In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble columns rise toward an endless sky, and the voices of a million souls echo through narrow streets, a child is born into a world that does not yet know his name. The year is 100 BC, though such numbers mean little to those who live beneath the weight of gods and the shadow of the Senate. The city stretches across 7 hills, each one crowned with temples and monuments to victories long past, each stone a testament to the Republic's eternal strength. In the crowded, winding alleys of the Subura district, where tenement buildings lean against one another like weary travellers, where the scent of cooking fires mingles with the sharper smell of ambition and desperation, a woman brings forth a son. His name is Gaius Julius Caesar, and the world does not pause to notice. The Subura is not the Palatine Hill, where the wealthy recline on cushions of silk and debate philosophy beneath painted ceilings. It is a place of noise and life, of merchants hawking bread and wine, of workers returning home with calloused hands and tired eyes. Here, the marble splendour of Rome feels distant, almost like a dream glimpsed through morning fog. Yet the family into which this child is born carries a name that reaches back beyond memory, beyond the founding of the city itself. The duly claim descent from Iulus, son of Aeneas, the Trojan hero who fled burning Troy and journeyed across wine-dark seas to establish a new homeland in Italy. And Aeneas, so the stories whisper, was the son of Venus herself, the goddess of love and beauty, whose presence lingers in every rose that blooms and every heart that yearns. But divine ancestry does not fill empty coffers. The Julian family, for all its noble blood and ancient glory, has fallen on times of shadow and scarcity. Their wealth has diminished like water seeping through cracked stone, leaving behind only pride and the faded grandeur of a name. Young Gaius grows in this space between greatness and obscurity, learning early that the world respects power more than lineage, gold more than gods. His mother Aurelia is a woman of intelligence and iron will, managing the household with a steady hand while her husband serves in distant provinces. She teaches her son to read and think, to hold his head high even when coins are scarce, to understand that in Rome, survival requires more than strength. It requires cunning, patience, and the ability to see 10 moves ahead in the endless game of power. The boy watches and learns. He observes the senators in their togas trimmed with purple, moving through the forum like ships in full sail. He listens to the orators who stand on the rostra, their voices carrying across the open space, shaping opinion with words as surely as a sculptor shapes marble with a chisel. He sees how the mob can be swayed, how bread and spectacle can turn anger into adoration, how fear and hope dance together in the human heart. The Republic seems eternal, unshakable, its traditions stretching back 5 centuries to the day when Brutus expelled the last king and Rome swore never again to bow before a single man. The Senate meets in its hallowed chamber, hundreds of voices arguing, debating, voting, each man a guardian of Rome's freedom. Yet even a child can sense the currents beneath the surface, the rivalries that simmer like coals, the ambitions that burn like Greek fire, impossible to extinguish. Caesar's father is a man of moderate accomplishment, serving as praetor and governor, but never reaching the highest offices. He is absent often, and when he is home, he brings with him the weariness of a man who has climbed but not high enough, who has grasped but never held. The boy learns from this absence as much as from any presence. He learns that in Rome, to stand still is to fall behind, that reputation must be constantly renewed, that glory fades unless constantly fed. And then, when Caesar is only 15 years old, his father dies suddenly in the quiet of morning, tying his shoes, a death so ordinary, so lacking in drama, that it almost seems an insult to a family that claims Venus as their ancestor. In an instant the boy becomes the head of his household, responsible for his mother and his sisters, for the maintenance of what little property and dignity remain. 15 years old, not yet a man by Roman law, and already bearing the weight of family, legacy, and survival. Other boys his age still play at war with wooden swords, still dream of glory without understanding its price. But Caesar has no such luxury. The world has pressed down upon him, and he must either rise to meet it or be crushed beneath its indifferent weight. Around him, Rome itself is convulsing. The political landscape trembles like the earth before a great quake. Two men dominate the stage, Marius and Sulla, generals both, each commanding legions loyal to them personally rather than to the abstract ideal of Rome. Marius is a new man, a homo novus, risen from obscurity through military genius and ruthless ambition. He has saved Rome from northern barbarians and reformed the legions, opening military service to the poor and creating armies of professional soldiers who look to their commander for pay and plunder. Sulla is an optimate, a champion of the Senate's traditional power, aristocratic and brilliant and utterly without mercy when crossed. These two men circle each other like wolves, and Rome, unwittingly, has become their arena. Caesar's Aunt Julia is married to Marius. This connection, which might seem a blessing, becomes a deadly burden when Sulla marches on Rome itself, an act unthinkable, unprecedented, a violation of every sacred boundary between military and civil authority. Legions are meant to protect Rome, not threaten it, but Sulla's soldiers follow him through the city gates, and blood runs in the streets. Marius flees, and Sulla begins his proscriptions, posting lists of enemies to be killed on sight, their property confiscated, their families ruined. To be connected to Marius is to be marked for death. Young Caesar is married to Cornelia, daughter of Cinna, one of Marius's closest allies. It is a political marriage, arranged when both were children, but it has grown into something deeper, affection, perhaps even love. Rare and precious in a world where marriages are contracts and wives are currencies. Sulla demands that Caesar divorce her, that he sever this dangerous connection and prove his loyalty to the new order. To refuse is to invite destruction. To comply is to betray not only his wife but his own family's honour, his aunt's memory, everything that makes him who he is. Caesar refuses. It is a quiet act, not dramatic or loud, but it reverberates nonetheless. A teenager, nearly powerless, standing before the most powerful man in Rome and saying no. Sulla, who has killed hundreds without hesitation, who has marched legions through the sacred heart of the Republic, who has made himself dictator and rewritten the constitution to secure the Senate's power forever, looks at this boy and sees something troubling. Some say Sulla remarked that in Caesar he saw many Mariuses. It is not a compliment. It is a warning, a recognition of danger. Caesar flees Rome, disappearing into the countryside, hiding among friends and allies, constantly moving, never safe. He contracts malaria in the marshes, his body racked with fever, his future uncertain. The death lists are updated constantly, and his name appears on them. He is too young to die, too insignificant to matter, yet here he is, hunted like a criminal for the crime of loyalty. Friends intervene, relatives plead, bribes are paid, and eventually Sulla relents, allowing the boy to live but banishing him from Rome. Caesar departs, sailing east toward the provinces, toward military service, toward a future he cannot yet imagine. The ship cuts through the Tyrrhenian Sea, its sail billowing in the wind, and Caesar stands at the rail, watching Rome recede into the distance. The city of his birth, the centre of the world, growing smaller and smaller until it vanishes beyond the curve of the horizon. He does not know if he will ever return. He does not know that when he does, he will bring with him the seeds of the Republic's destruction and the Empire's birth. For now he is simply a young man in exile, stripped of everything but his name and his will, sailing toward an uncertain dawn. The eastern provinces of Rome stretch across a landscape where ancient civilizations have risen and fallen for thousands of years before the wolf, ever suckled Romulus and Remus. Here, Greek is spoken as often as Latin, and the cities bear names heavy with history: Athens, Ephesus, Pergamon, Antioch. The temples are not to Jupiter and Mars, but to Zeus and Ares, though the gods, of course, do not care what mortals call them. Caesar arrives in Asia Minor to serve on the staff of Marcus Thermus, the provincial governor, and for the first time in his life he is beyond the suffocating weight of Rome's politics, beyond the Senate's intrigues and the streets soaked in prescription blood. Military life in the provinces is different from anything he has known. It is a world of discipline and hierarchy, of dawn drills and evening reports, of soldiers who measure respect not by ancestry, but by competence and courage. Caesar, raised among philosophers and orators, must now learn the language of the legion. The commands barked in rough Latin, the clash of gladius against scutum, the long marches under a sun that beats down like a hammer on an anvil. He is soft at first, a patrician boy unused to hardship, but he learns quickly. He always learns quickly. The campaign takes him to Mytilene, a city on the island of Lesbos that has rebelled against Roman authority. It is a small conflict, barely worth mentioning in the grand sweep of history, but for Caesar it becomes a crucible. During the siege, a fellow soldier falls wounded, surrounded by enemies, certain to die or be captured. Without hesitation, Caesar charges forward, his sword flashing in the Mediterranean sunlight, his voice shouting defiance. He reaches the fallen man, drives back the attackers, and drags him to safety, his own blood mixing with his comrades', his own breath coming in ragged gasps. For this act he receives the civic crown, the Corona Civica, woven from oak leaves and awarded only for saving a Roman citizen's life in battle. It is one of Rome's highest military honours, and it comes with tangible privileges. A man who wears the civic crown is honoured wherever he goes. At public games, the audience rises when he enters. In the Senate, he has the right to speak before others of his rank. For Caesar, still in his early 20s, it is validation and vindication, proof that he is more than his name, more than his debts, more than the boy who fled Rome in the night. He has saved a life, and Rome acknowledges it. The oak leaves rest upon his brow like a promise. But the provinces hold more than military glory. They hold danger of a different kind, sudden and personal. After the campaign ends, Caesar sails toward Rhodes, intending to study rhetoric under Apollonius Molon, the greatest teacher of oratory in the world. But the seas are not safe. Cilician pirates operating from hidden coves along the Anatolian coast have turned the Mediterranean into their hunting ground. They are numerous and bold, attacking merchant vessels and passenger ships with impunity, knowing that Rome's navy is stretched thin and its attention focused elsewhere. Caesar's ship is intercepted, boarded, and captured. He and his companions are taken hostage, held in a pirate stronghold while a ransom demand is sent to Rome. The pirates ask for 20 talents of silver, substantial sum but not extraordinary for a Roman nobleman. Caesar, surveying his captors with cool assessment, laughs at the amount. He tells them they insult him by undervaluing his worth. He insists they demand 50 talents instead. The pirates, amused and confused, agree. While messengers are dispatched to arrange the payment, Caesar remains with the pirates for 38 days. It is one of the strangest episodes in his life, a bizarre interlude where the normal rules of captor and captive seem suspended. He does not cower or plead. He treats the pirates not as masters but as temporary inconveniences. He orders them to be quiet when he wants to sleep. He participates in their exercises and games, beating them at wrestling and foot races. He writes poetry and speeches and insists they listen, calling them illiterate barbarians when they fail to appreciate his rhetoric. He jokes with them, shares their meals, and repeatedly, casually promises that once he is freed, he will return and have them all crucified. The pirates laugh, thinking it a jest, this young Roman's dark humour. But Caesar is not joking. He never jokes about such things. The ransom arrives. Caesar is released. He immediately travels to Miletus, convinces the governor to lend him ships and men, and returns to the pirate stronghold. He attacks swiftly and without mercy, capturing the pirates and recovering much of the ransom gold. True to his word, he has them crucified, lining the coast with crosses as a message to any who might think Romans are easy prey. But because they treated him well during his captivity, he shows a measure of mercy. He orders their throats cut before the crucifixion, sparing them the slow agony of suffocation and exposure. It is a strange kindness, this efficient killing, but it reveals something essential about Caesar. He keeps his promises, he rewards loyalty, and he punishes betrayal. But he is never cruel for cruelty's sake. Violence for him is a tool, not a pleasure. These years in the East shape him in ways that Rome never could. He learns to lead men who do not care about his ancestry, who judge him only by his actions. He learns to make decisions quickly, to assess risk and reward in the span of a heartbeat. He learns that reputation is built through deeds, not words, though words can amplify deeds until they echo across the world. He studies rhetoric in Rhodes, absorbing the techniques of persuasion, learning how to structure an argument, how to modulate his voice, how to make an audience feel what he wants them to feel. Tory. In Rome is power. A man who can sway the Senate or the Forum can achieve what no legion can. When news arrives that Sulla has died in 78 BC, Caesar knows it is time to return home. The dictator's death leaves a vacuum, and vacuums in Rome are quickly filled. The prescriptions have ended, the death lists burned or forgotten, and it is safe, or as safe as Rome ever is, for a young Julian nobleman with military honours and Eastern experience to re-enter the political arena. He boards a ship once more, sailing west toward Italy, toward the city of 7 hills, toward a destiny he has begun to glimpse like a distant shore emerging from morning mist. Rome welcomes him back, though not with fanfare. He is still relatively unknown, one young nobleman among hundreds, distinguished only by the oak crown he has earned and the name he carries. But Caesar understands something that many of his contemporaries do not. In Rome, obscurity is temporary for those willing to gamble everything. The Roman political system is ancient and elaborate, a ladder of offices called the cursus honorum, the course of honours, that a man must climb step by step if he wishes to reach the heights of power. Each rung has age requirements, waiting periods, and implicit rules that everyone understands but no one writes down. He begins as a military tribune, a minor position that allows him to gain further experience with the legions and establish connections with soldiers and officers. Then he stands for election as quaestor, a financial magistrate responsible for managing public funds and assisting governors in the provinces. It is a necessary step, unglamorous but essential, and Caesar secures the position through a combination of his family name, his military reputation, and his growing skill at public speaking. He is assigned to Further Spain, a province on the far edge of the Roman world, where mountains give way to the Atlantic and the sun sets into an ocean that seems infinite. In Spain, Caesar governs with the energy and impatience that will characterize his entire life. He resolves local disputes, collects taxes, raises troops, and begins to understand the mechanics of provincial administration. But he also spends money, borrowed money, vast sums that he does not have, financing games and distributions to win the loyalty and affection of the soldiers and locals. Debt in Rome is not necessarily a burden. It is a tool, a form of leverage. As long as a man continues to rise, his creditors will wait patiently, confident they will be repaid with interest when he finally reaches the consulship and secures a lucrative provincial governorship. But if he stalls, if his ascent falters, then the creditors descend like vultures, and a man can find himself ruined, exiled, or dead. Caesar returns to Rome from Spain and stands for the office of aedile, a position responsible for public works, maintenance of temples, and, most importantly, the organisation of public games. The games are spectacle and politics combined, a way for ambitious men to court popular favour by staging elaborate gladiatorial combats, chariot races, theatrical performances, and wild beast hunts. Caesar throws himself into the role with reckless extravagance. He borrows even more money, presenting games so lavish that they become the talk of the city. 320 pairs of gladiators fight in his honour, each armed with weapons made of silver. An unheard of luxury. A display so excessive that it borders on vulgarity, yet the people adore it. They pack the Circus Maximus and the Forum, cheering, gasping, chanting his name. Caesar understands what the Senate often forgets. The people's love is a currency as valuable as gold. And in the Republic's increasingly unstable political climate, popular support can outweigh senatorial disapproval. His personal life, too, is in flux. Cornelia, his beloved wife, the woman for whom he defied Sulla, dies young, her body worn down by childbirth or illness. History does not record the details, only the loss. Caesar is genuinely grief-stricken, and he does something extraordinary for a Roman man of his era. He delivers a public funeral oration for her, praising her virtues and mourning her death before the assembled citizens. It is unusual, almost scandalous, to honour a young wife so publicly, but Caesar does not care for convention. He remarries soon after, taking Pompeia, a granddaughter of Sulla, as his wife. It is a political match, designed to reconcile old enmities and broaden his base of support, but it lacks the warmth of his first marriage. Then comes an opportunity that no one expects him to seize. The position of Pontifex Maximus, the chief priest of Rome's state religion, becomes vacant. It is one of the most prestigious roles in the Republic, held for life, carrying immense religious authority and political influence. Tradition dictates that it should go to a senior statesman, someone with decades of service and unimpeachable reputation. Caesar is barely 37 years old, heavily in debt, and relatively junior. Yet he decides to run for the position, gambling everything on a single election. The vote is held among the people, and the entire city seems to hold its breath. Caesar's opponents are men of stature and experience, supported by the Senate's conservative factions. But Caesar campaigns with ferocious energy, visiting every district, speaking in every tavern and marketplace, making promises, calling in favours, spending money he doesn't have.